Hi there, and welcome to Chapter 3 of the GM Bootcamp by Greatwyrm Games. In this chapter, we focus on world building. World building is the process of developing a detailed and plausible fictional world for a novel or story, especially in science fiction, fantasy, video games, and tabletop RPGs. So why do it? Why world build? First, world building is a great outlet for creativity, a canvas that holds any dream you can imagine. If you often find yourself asking, what if? World building is for you. Another benefit of world building is that it makes us more invested in the game. Spending time developing the world makes us more excited to run adventures in it. Lastly, world building can support a narrative we have in mind. Some of you may already have an idea for the underlying story of your game. Designing a world that supports that kind of story will help you create the right atmosphere at the table. You don't even have to build an entire world to receive all of these great benefits. All you have to do is build what's fun and borrow the rest. For example, I needed a pantheon for my home D&D game, so I opened the Dungeon Master's Guide and chose a few gods from there. You can outsource anything you don't feel like creating. In fact, you can outsource the entire world, especially if you want to reproduce the experience or atmosphere of a book or a TV show that you enjoy. If you're planning a D&D game, you could try using one of its official worlds like Faerun, Ravenloft, Eberron, and many others. But even if you pick a pre-made world for your game, you will need to make some additions and alterations. By becoming better at world building, you can take these existing worlds and really make them your own. Make them suited for the stories that you want to tell. So by the end of this chapter, you will be able to design or adapt a fictional world for your game. A world that is consistent, interesting to explore, and sets a solid foundation for great storytelling. More importantly, you will walk away with the tools and methods to world build without getting lost in the process. All of the examples in this chapter are related to Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, but the methodologies we discuss work for any game system you use. While world building is often a solitary process that the GM does on their own, there are ways to turn world building into a collaborative process. Games like Microscope, The Quiet Year, and Deck of Worlds provide structures for world building along with your players. You'll find links to all of these in the resources section of this chapter. Collaborative world building games like these often make the process easier, because more minds tend to be more creative. They also result in the players being more invested, since they have a greater sense of ownership. Their ideas are a part of the world. The drawback is that there will be less discovery on the player's end, and that you will have less control in the creation process, which can be a bad thing if you have a specific vision in mind. Even if you choose to build the world with your players, these games only create an outline. Some parts will be left for you to define and fill in. But worry not. After this chapter, you will have all the tools you need to do just that. Let's go over the things you will learn. Our first lesson explores the world's foundation and covers some terminology and key concepts in world design. We'll introduce the idea of world-building pillars and how we can use them to create a thematically consistent world. In Lesson 2, we'll talk about world-building elements, which are specific pieces of your world. We'll take a closer look at factions, events, locations, and how all of these are tied to one another and to the pillars we've established earlier. In the third lesson of this chapter, we will discuss several mindsets and guidelines that can help during the world-building process. These will help you maintain focus, avoid overbuilding, and keep following the shiny as you practice the skills learned in this chapter. As you already know, the final project of this course is designing a one-shot adventure that you can run for your friends. I want you to start thinking about the world of your game. Will you build one from scratch, or do you plan on borrowing and altering a pre-made world? Think about that for a moment, and I'll see you back here in Lesson 1.